less than 6 seconds on his clock. Anish Giri plays for around 4.5 minutes in this match. Anish starts with white pieces and Royal was Murphy's defense the board. Anish cast king side. Black had to develop his dark square bishop. He pushes c4, not allowing the push of b5, and bishop comes in. Knight develops. Bishop and shirts and push to d3, and black castles on the king side now. Bishop e3 now by Anish. Place a bishop on square diagonals, which is pretty much open. The knight, if jumps here, this pawn will be gone. So rook to e8 and is equal, and Anish pushes a3, preparing for b4 and pushing the pawns further. So knight h5 and knight d5. This knight is a very good piece to have, and it needs to be challenged immediately. So knight e7 as expected challenges the knight. On d5. The bishops are staring at each other after this knight move to e7. Anish be thinking of 8 or whether to retrieve the bishop and put along this square diagonal. 4 keeps the bishop intact, so queen will be developed to a4. So b5 is pushed, and an in between move that once this post move, it's a check now. So queen got to capture, and after this the bishop comes in, and it's in this light square diagonal. Once this pawn is gone, it's going to be very active. Bishop pinning pawn and will be pretty dangerous. But black got his light square bishop and can't counter it. c5 now, and rooks to c1 now. These pawns are going to be gone pretty soon, and this c file is going to pretty much open now. So this queen creates this battery attacking this defender bishop of black. So bishop e6, changing the light square bishop of Anish, and he retrieved the bishop. Now this queen is supporting both these bishops. Knight to f4. Here, in case of a capture, you lose pawn, but there could be compensation here. He goes for the capture of the b5 pawn with his c pawn, opening up the c file. Recaptures with the pawn, and the bishops are exchanged, and the queen. He captures the pawn now. Attacking the rook, and this pawn will be gone pretty much. That move is there, and that lost pawn. So that move happens. This compensation when rook goes in. This pawn is captured, and Anish goes for the capture of the. So will Ruslan capture with his rook or with his pawn? So he captures with his rook, develops the rook, but that creates two isolated pawns. Pawn capture would have been better, I think. Then these pawns will be connected, and you can just push this pawn and now hitting the rook. Rook retrieves. This pawn is now attacked twice, and the rook. These pawns get exchanged like this basically. So Anish captures the pawn on b5, whereas this pawn is gone. So queen h6 is met with queen e7. Retreat, rook attacking the bishop. So rook a8. So there is no good squares for this bishop. Pawn covers the square, the rook covers all of the squares. So a good idea will be to push the pawn and create a space. It also connects the rook bishop with the queen. It's a badly placed bishop at the moment. Anish is taking a lot of time. He brings his rook to a1, and his pawn is pushed here. The idea is that the bishop is now supported by the queen, and it also prevents this pawn from pushing any further. So Anish is down to 10 seconds on the clock now. So it's a checkmate threat. So, but this pawn push protects the pawn on h7 and attacks the knight at the same time. The rook to e3 attacks the queen. Queen got to stay on the 7th rank. So goes for the queen trade, and it's accepted. And king captures back. Knight comes to e6 with a check, and king comes closer. And now this, because it's a fork, but you can just go for the capture and you can escape from that fork. So the rook attacks the knight. Knight goes and captures the pawn, and bishop retrieves, goes after the bishop. Bishop now comes to g3, and now it's advantage white. Pushes the pawn. The position is now equal. Best move was knight e6. Rook attacks the knight. Knight goes into the outpost. Goes after the pawn, and knight protects the pawn. Again attacks the knight, and goes and capture the pawn. The rook goes after to support the pawn. King comes in away from the trap of the bishop. Anish is playing with 5 seconds on the clock. Kings are in a position. The pawn push forms this outpost for this bishop. Rook c2. Position is still equal if you are wondering. Supports the pawn. Check now. Bishop retrieves. A check. Knight covers the check and creates a counter check, forcing the king back. King goes to d3, again on the check. Rook covers the check, and the check by white. Down, goes after the pawn. Here he misses his checkmate opportunity. Knight coming in, and after that check would have been game over. Captures. King captures back. Pawn is captured. King goes up the board. Rook goes after the pawn. Supports the pawn. Pawn blacks. Agrees for a draw, and quite a brilliant game. And Anish Giri played for around 4.5 minutes after being like 6 seconds down on the clock. But because of he was low on time, he missed an important opportunity to probably could have won the match because so that's the game. Both the players are analyzing their games. So we'll be back with more such videos.